What happens when a single outfit moment becomes louder than an entire career built over decades? One appearance, one camera angle, one frozen frame online, and suddenly the conversation shifts away from talent, experience, and years of hard work. Instead, it becomes about what people think they saw. That is exactly what surrounded Kate Garraway, where a wardrobe moment turned into a wave of attention that spread far faster than the story behind it. When you hear the name Kate Garraway, you don't just think of appearances. You think of resilience. You think of someone who has spoken openly about personal struggle, carried herself through public pressure, and continued showing up in front of millions with professionalism and warmth. But fame has a strange habit. It doesn't always remember the full person. Sometimes it zooms in on a single detail and forgets everything else. This story isn't really about clothing. It's about how quickly attention can shift in the modern world. One moment, a public figure is recognized for decades of work. The next moment, a visual fragment becomes the headline. And you have to ask yourself, why does that happen so easily now? The promise of this story is simple: to look beyond the surface reaction and understand what really drives moments like this. Because once you strip away the noise, you often find something far more human underneath: pressure, expectation, and the constant reality of being watched without pause. The moment itself began like many televised appearances do. Lights, cameras, movement behind the scenes, a carefully managed environment where everything is designed to feel effortless on screen. But what the audience sees is only the final frame. They don't see the adjustments, the preparation, or the fact that public figures rarely experience ordinary moments in front of a camera. And then it happened. A visual detail from the appearance began circulating online. Not the message being discussed, not the interview content, just the image. And in today's world, that is often enough for a narrative to form on its own. Here is where the emotional conflict begins. Because when someone has spent years building a reputation on professionalism and strength, it can feel unfair when attention shifts to something so surface level. Have you ever been misunderstood based on a single moment, without anyone asking for context? Now, imagine that happening in front of millions. As reactions spread, people interpreted the moment in different ways. Some dismissed the attention as exaggerated. Others amplified it. But very few paused to consider the bigger picture, that public figures are still human beings navigating unpredictable visibility every time they step in front of a lens. The key turning point in stories like this is not the image itself, but the speed at which meaning gets attached to it. Once that happens, it becomes difficult to pull the narrative back toward reality. Emotion overrides context. Reaction overrides understanding. At its emotional peak, this story reveals something deeper about modern attention. We live in a world where visibility is instant, but understanding takes time, and most people don't wait for it. That gap is where misunderstandings grow. And yet, there is a lesson here that goes beyond celebrity culture. It applies to anyone living in a digital age. What you see first is not always the full truth. Sometimes it is only the most clickable fragment of a much larger life. So the next time a moment like this appears online, it is worth pausing for a second. Not to judge faster, but to see deeper. Because behind every headline, every image, every viral clip, there is always a full human story waiting to be remembered.